And look, there's wine. This is so civilized.
So I thought we would talk a little bit about you and your life. And one of the things that I was very impressed with was your story about your mom and how she had saved, and you hadn't even known the savings that she had put aside.
My mother was a fiercely independent woman, and a lot of what I learned about it was after she passed. But she went through a very difficult first marriage to my biological father. It ended in divorce. It was a real tragedy. He also died very young when he was 37. And from that experience, she wanted to have her own financial independence for the rest of her life. So she, in those days, she was working at her father's clothing company that made children's winter clothing called Kitty's Togs. And she and her sisters all worked for the family. And she took 20% of her paycheck each week and invested it in just stocks in the S&P that paid dividends and telco bonds. And I remember her telling me this: people would rather freeze in the dark than cut off their phone.
Yeah.
And so these things were yielding 7% back then. And she had that portfolio for 62 years. And she hid it from both her husbands. And when she passed away, I got a call from the executor, because I'm older than my brother by 2 years. And he said, "You got to come down here. Your mother died a very wealthy woman." I said, I don't think so. We're a middle-class family. And he said, no, you got to get down here. And I went and met him, and I saw what she'd done. And I called my brother and said, "Shane, you're not going to believe this. This is crazy." And so what happened was she never spent she never sold the stocks that paid dividends, and she never sold the bonds. She'd only spend the interest or the dividends. So this thing grew over 60 years at 8, 10, 15, 20% a year.
Wow.
She was better than any money manager out there. So her rule was very simple. No more than 5% in anyone's stock or bond, no more than 20% in anyone's sector, and just keep adjusting it every year. She was not an analyst, just a working gal. And wow, did she get rich. And so I formed an ETF company around those rules, and it's been very successful.
What advice would you have for the audience here about financial freedom and how to get there?
Well, from that same premise, we live in a consumer-based society. So by the time you're 16, you're getting bombarded for your first credit card. One of the reasons I'm an investor in almost all the credit card companies is they make a lot of money on a predatory basis. They get you to spend on things you don't need. Go into your closet and look at your shoes, your jeans, your T-shirts, and your suits. Just there. Everybody has those, men or women. You're only wearing 25% of them. The rest, you haven't worn in 2 years because you bought them in a moment of weakness. I think I want those sneakers. You don't wear them. But when you do that, that money is dead. It could have made 8% a year, but it's dead now. And you do that for 60 years, you have nothing to speak of. And the average salary in America is $69,000. So if all you did was take 15% of your salary and put it into, a very simple portfolio, just buy the index, the S&P, you'd have $1.5 million when you retire. But it's the ability to actually not buy the crap you don't need. There's so much crap everybody buys they don't need. And look, I buy crap too, but I can afford to buy crap. And so, and I buy a lot of watches, and my wife is really pissed at how many watches I bring home. But,
How many watches do you have?
I don't say anymore because the insurance companies won't insure me if I do. Listen, and there was a time when I had nothing. And so I got married 40 years ago, and we had pizza at our wedding because we couldn't afford any food. So I've had the same journey with the same woman, and she's seen me earn it, so she gets it. But she's still pissed about, It's very crazy. It's very crazy to actually negotiate with your wife, so I hide the watches when I bring them home.
I understand that my husband does that too.
Yeah. It's nuts.
So we have a lot of people here from all over the world, and I think everyone has seen quite a number of episodes, and I think would probably be interested in knowing what do you consider to be the best investment that you've made on Shark Tank?
After doing this for 16 years and doing maybe an average of 12 deals a year, when you're sitting there and you're listening to the pitch, you're so sure it's a great idea, and you just know it's a winner, and you write a check for $1 million. And then every once in a while you see some deal where you say, it's so stupid, but I think I'm going to take a flyer. And then so there's your deals. Let's say it's 10 to make the numbers easy. And then the years go by. Generally between 5 and 7 years later, the winners emerge. And out of 10, 3 make 100 or 200 or 1,000 times on their money, and the other 7 go to zero. That's the nature of venture capital. But here's the kicker. It's never the one that you thought was a winner. Ever is it that deal. You cannot pick winners in venture capital because the outcomes are serendipitous in many different ways. And sometimes it's the operator, sometimes it's the market, but I'll give you an example of last year's monster winner. And by the way, the winners pay for all your mistakes. So this woman comes out named Anna Skaya 4 years ago, pre-pandemic. And she comes out and she says, "Hi, I'm Anna Skaya, and I do cat DNA tests." So she takes a swab and you stick it where the sun doesn't shine in your cat, and you send it in. For $29, you're going to get the data on what to feed your cat so you can extend its life. I looked at it and said, "Anna, I can buy a new cat for $5. Why would I give it, what, when the cat snuffs? I could just get another one." Because the average life of a cat's 12 years. She can extend the cat life to 20. Because cats have teeth, and when you feed them the wrong food, that you can't do a root canal on it, and you poison it, and it drops dead, and all that crap. So I said, Anna, no one's going to give you a dime. This is a stupid idea. But she was so persistent. And I finally said, for $250,000, I can just get her out of here. I'm going to buy her deal. Because we were in there for an hour, and she just wouldn't stop. That company was not in the cat business. It was in the DNA data collection business. And it got bought by Xeodus for such a number, which is a spin-out of Pfizer, that we had to sign a DNA to not disclose the purchase price. All cash, 36 months later.
Wow.
I made a shitload of money. And I got all this negative, "Oh, you hate cats." And I said, "I don't hate cats, but they're $5. New cats are $5. But I didn't understand there are 110 million cats in America. People love their cats more than dogs. And they pay the $29. And now the data pools are so interesting that they're selling it to the pet food companies. So there's a huge royalty stream going back. And Anna and I are friends. She moved to Miami with her Canadian lumberjack husband, a massive guy. She's a Russian. I mean, they just had a kid. And we're looking at deals together. I'd invest in her in 2 seconds, but she's too rich. That's the problem. It was incredible. But that's what I mean. You don't know.
So is there a thread that you would say runs through all of those great deals? And if there were, what would it be?
Well, there is a thread that's interesting to share with you tonight. What makes a successful pitch versus who gets the check and who doesn't? So this prof, I don't know, was maybe 9 years into Shark Tank, took the unedited tapes from 25 countries, different languages too, and said, is there anything common about a successful pitch versus one that's unsuccessful? Yeah. And unsuccessful means you didn't get a check. You got kicked out of the tank. This does not determine the outcome of the company. It just determines the beginning of the journey by getting funded. And it turns out there are 3 attributes that are present not some of the time, 100% of the time, in every language, in every geography, in every successful pitch. So here they are. Number 1, I teach this stuff, by the way, now. I teach it to engineers because it's the definition of leadership to me. You should listen to this. If it's the only thing you remember of my presentation tonight or our discussion, it's got to be this. Can you articulate the opportunity in 90 seconds or less? Because people are busy as hell. And if you can't explain what the opportunity is, and the average time was 24 seconds. Then number 2, can you articulate why you can take this great idea, because great ideas are a dime a dozen, but the ability to execute is really hard. Executional skills are extremely rare. So if you can connect the idea, which everybody has a great idea, but nobody has executional skills to execute on it, and explain what it is about you that can take it and make it work. So did you work for a competitor? Have you tried before and failed and figured out what you did wrong? I would personally rather invest in an entrepreneur that's felt the sting of failure. It's very motivational. Or is it's something that you studied, or something about you that can execute? That takes longer. And the last one, and this is the killer, because when you get the first 2 right, everybody wants a piece of the deal. But the third one is difficult because I've watched the oxygen get sucked out of a room bigger than this when this happens. In the context of Shark Tank, you've beaten out 150,000 people that have tried to get on the carpet.
Yeah.
There's only 220 that make it. You have a great idea, everybody agrees it's great. You've explained why you're the right person to execute on it. And then lastly, they start asking about your numbers. How big is the market? How fast is it growing? What are the break-even analysis? What's the gross margins at different volumes? How many competitors are there? If you get the first 2 right, but you don't know your numbers, you deserve to burn in hell in perpetuity, and I'll put you there myself. But if you get all 3 right, the probability of success goes up geometrically. Those are the attributes of a successful pitch. Not just on Shark Tank, anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a preacher, a leader, a mother, a father, or a general. People need to know where they're going, and that you know how to get them there, and that you know how to measure it.
Yeah.
That's leadership.
That's awesome.
That's true.
So one of the things that I think that you talk about is the qualities of success and how someone is successful.
In your life, and we're going to just talk about 24-hour cycles, everybody in this room has a mandate. They have something they need to do. They have chosen a career, perhaps, or they have an objective they want to achieve, or they could be a politician that wants to be elected, or it doesn't matter. And in order to do that in the 14 or 15 hours you're awake, you have to distinguish between what is the signal and what is the noise. The signal is your minutes advancing your ability to complete the task that you've set for yourself that day. Whatever it is. It could be 3 things, 5 things, doesn't matter. The noise is all the things that are going to distract you. Your cell phone ringing, your friend calling you, you watching something on TikTok, whatever it is, that's noise. Because when you're dealing with noise, you're not working on the signal.
Yeah.
So I have 2 examples that everybody knows to explain this. I used to work for Steve Jobs in the late 80s and very early 90s, making his educational software. I didn't work for him. I was the company that provided it. We were the learning company. All of his software in schools was our software. So we would meet with Steve every quarter in his old headquarters in Cupertino. Real dump, actually, compared to what they have now. But it was one of those corporate buildings where, the windows don't open, but there's a little window part that opens like this. You can get air. You know those things in hotels?
Yep.
So there was a boardroom, and we would always come in, and the question was, how much are we going to spend on the updates, on which titles, for which schools, all that stuff. And then, the budgets were sort of 12 to 25 million per quarter. And Steve was not a nice guy. There's nothing nice about him. And this is well documented by many, people have documented this stuff, but I lived it. So I'd go in there and say, okay, Steve, look, here's Oregon Trail, here's the team from Rita Rabbit or Carmen Sandiego, whatever, it didn't matter. And we're thinking we'll spend 12, 15 million on this update. You're going to pay for it. And the woman that was doing Oregon Trail was the product manager, said, she came for the presentation, said, Steve, I want to spend $2 million of your money on market research to determine whether these features are better than others in New York, Florida, Texas, California, where most of the schools are. And he looked at her and he just ripped her flesh off, just berated her, beat her up in front of her peers. Oh my goodness, this guy was brutal. And he said to her, we don't do market research at Apple. Nobody knows what they want until I tell them what they want. Then they buy it because I said so. And, I said to him, Steve, you sound like a real asshole. I got to tell you. You do. And look at this woman. She's in tears. He said, Kevin, are you up 30% over last quarter on Apple sales? Are you making a boatload of money? Are we growing share faster than anybody else in schools? That's all true, Steve. Shut up and go to work. He was right. He was 100% right. And look what he achieved before he died. He was 85% signal, 15% noise. You're not well-liked socially, but what he achieved was extraordinary. Largest market cap company on earth. Yeah. That was all him. And others embellished it, but that was him. One other guy that is 100% signal, and I've never met anybody like him, is Elon Musk. No noise, 100% signal, walks away from you if you're boring him with a conversation, doesn't give a shit. And look what he's achieved. No man on earth has done what he's done. He's like the modern Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, you can't even describe the achievements he's made because they keep coming over and over again. He is socially unusual. My son works in Fremont at Tesla. He's an engineer, electrical engineer. I've met him a few times. But look at what he's achieved. So you can't deny the ratio. It's a long answer, the ratio of signal to noise. Each one of you have to decide. How much signal, how much noise? Maybe you think 60 is enough on signal. I don't think so. I think you got to get up into the 70s. I'm probably 75 because I have to deal with my wife. That's noise. I don't mean that in a negative way. But she's saying, "What? You've got to deal with the family." And I'm saying, I really want to do one more Zoom in Germany or, Abu Dhabi. And she's saying, you got to stop. We got to eat dinner. And she's right. But I want people to understand what I just said there. That's important because that's the definition of success versus failure. Signal and noise. And one other attribute, not to extend this answer too long. 3 years ago, one of my female CEOs said to me, Kevin, you talk too much. You should shut up and listen. You should reverse the ratio of 2/3 talking all day and listen 2/3 and talk 1/3, which I've implemented, and she's right. You become far better as a decision maker when you have more knowledge, when you shut up and listen. So I'm very good now at just meeting somebody and not saying anything. They start talking. She's right. Women have a lot of good ideas. I tell 2/3 of my successes in Shark Tank in 16 years have come from companies run by women.
Really?
Yeah, more. Yeah, they don't even know each other. Long answer, but I wanted to just disgorge that information. It's valuable. You may not be able to execute on it, But this signal noise thing is a big deal.